Welcome aboard. It's Captain G with the Axis Turn 9 of our Global War 1939 Ultra. So I'm going to hit on a half a dozen highlights from the penultimate Axis turn, although technically this was Italy's 8th turn. So the Italians, having been defeated in northern Spain, basically just consolidated, moved their forces in. As you can see, every Italian fighter, tactical bomber, medium bomber, and heavy bomber that was on the board has flown to within striking distance of Cairo. That is 6 fighters, 3 tactical bombers, a medium, and a heavy. And sitting up here in northern Italy with the air base is the newest heavy bomber that Mussolini bought. So they lost their fast movers and their heavy hitters, the armor. I think the air will be where he's going to get his hits. And this force is moved in adjacent to the 8th Army. And then sitting up in northern Italy on this card, already married up to the 3 transports that he has, 2 heavy artilleries and an armor that will take this force, and that leaves these guys to move down into, most likely move down into Rome. Transports bring those down, and he'll strike Cairo, most likely on Italy 9. So that was prep move for the Italians. So that's one, was the Italian preparations. Point 2 was this battle here. So the Allied fleets had escaped on their turn 8 and left a few blockers. The Kriegsmarine moved in. That is that large naval task force augmented by an ever-growing number of U-boats. Plus, he has some U-boats here. So in the German Western Front, 2 items to hit on. One is this victory clearing the way to strike this transport fleet. And then 2, the Swedes, now activated by Germany, launched an invasion of Middle England. So German transports, the Swedish Navy, landed infantry and artillery into middle of Great Britain. So that's 2. 3, on the German Eastern Front, the Romanian 2nd Army, leading the combined Axis miners, the German 2nd Panzer, and the German 9th Army, which are these forces here on these task cards, all stayed together. He is not separated. Them moved into Kazakhstan within striking distance of the last Soviet factory, or if the 5th Shock Army doesn't go for Calcutta, they can swoop down to secure the Middle East and crush the Soviet 5th Shock Army. So that was 3. Point 4 in China, the Japanese crushed and defeated the last of the KMT forces, still leaving a large contingent to take care of the communists, be they Chinese, Mongolian, or Russian communists. They're well positioned. 5 then was the decision, the pressure put on Calcutta. The Japanese opted not to do the invasion of the Philippines. So they brought all of their amphibious task forces and SNLF veteran infantry to defend Calcutta. So in Calcutta, he has 5 SNLF, 3 conscript infantry, 1 Siam infantry, 2 veteran infantry, 2 of the landing tanks, LVTs, amphib tanks, 1 regular artillery rather, and 3 of the heavy artillery. And then in Air Forces, these green with the flag on the side, those are the replacement sculpts. I finally got painted out. They're white on the bottom and green on top. So he's got 4 of the veteran Air and 3 of the Japanese Zeros. The fleet's not really going to make a difference for the defense of Calcutta, but so that is quite a lot of air power and ground power. He's got more aircraft than the Soviets have tanks. So the Soviets will go for it, but unable to bring air down because they're out of range. The airborne assault that we mapped out too far, that won't work either. These guys can't make it, so it's just this 5th Shock Army. Too little, too late, but maybe the dice will roll in their favor. So they're going to blitz through Bengal and hit Calcutta. But that was 5. So while the ground troops didn't go into the Philippines, the fleet did. So the Axis the Japanese had a large fleet here, and they pulled ships from the southern islands. And the surviving fleet, which are these Yamatos and destroyers and cruisers and Zeros, wiped out the American battleships, aircraft that scrambled from the Philippines to protect the fleet, as well as the Anzac task force that was there. I think the Japanese took a couple hits, 2 each on the Yamatos. Those are double stacked damage. The Yamato class can take 3 hits, so 2 each, and then I think 1 destroyer were the 5 hits. The AA did get a number of hits. I'm sorry, something else. I'm sorry. No, the AA did not get any hits. But the Japanese pretty much wiped out the Americans with no problem. The AA that we rolled was a different battle. I'm trying to remember now where it was. I think we rolled a what if. I think we rolled a what if. Because while this was the official move, he wanted to see what if he had brought in this force, and they rolled well to defend themselves. But that is it. Next up, immediately for you, probably tonight and tomorrow for us, will be the Allied turn 9, and then it'll be the final turn. Right now, the Axis hold 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So they hold the 12 they need. Philippines would have been 13. Cairo could be 13 or 14, depending. So the 5th Shock Army has to win, otherwise the Allies have absolutely no chance. They don't have a force close enough to Paris, and their fleet's not going to make it around to hit Rome. So this is pretty much the deciding turn 9. This is Captain G for Eggman, over and out. Welcome aboard, it's Captain G with the Allies, turn 9. So we start with the Soviets, and we zoom in on Calcutta, and the 5th Shock Army did not succeed. Actually, they had some terrible rolls, and despite some of their heavy hitters, the Japanese took very light casualties. So just a loss of, I think, a few conscript infantry, the Siam infantry, and maybe a couple SNLFs, but the entire force for the Soviets was lost. Had to make the attempt because he needed to take a victory city, and that was our closest force and best chance. So that's stopping point 1 for the update. Point 2, since none of the air could make it, they just fortified with the heavy tanks, the elite guard infantry, airborne units, and are preparing for those 3 German and Axis minor allied army groups to come in and take Novosibirsk, destroy that final factory, and basically break the back or give the killing blow of the dying Soviet Union on the last round. So that's point 2. So that was pretty much it. The CCP just stood fast, dug in, didn't really do anything. So we go to the Middle East on the UK turn. They pulled everything back that they could out of Iraq, the infantry in Transjordan, back down into the 8th Army headquarters here in Cairo, and then reinforced southern Iraq to try to, southern Iran rather, with the Soviets infantry that moved in from Kashmir to deny the IPP sort of a moral victory, but it doesn't matter. Anything the Italians buy, turn 10, doesn't matter. So now the question is whether or not the Italians will hit. It was very expensive to pay off the damage to that factory. Didn't really leave the British a lot of IPP left. So they could bomb again. And then they outproduce the Allies in North Africa, especially since they can bring their naval units with all those transports down. So he'll either attack on the next turn, Italian 9, or wait one more and hit the very last move to get that 13th victory city. Point 4, as we go across North Africa, the British transport fleet and its carrier here off the coast of Spain brought the British component of the Canadian-led combined Allied task force down into here, hit these North African territories. The Axis intelligence knew right away what was happening, could see that with the port that this force threatens Rome, and there was a lot of discussion and debate about, can they move through Sea Zone 636? Is that a friendly sea zone? Is it neutral sea zone? Is it an enemy or a hostile sea zone? We went back and forth. We thought because the Allies had invaded Spain, that this would be a hostile force. However, this was never activated as pro-Axis. If it was neutral, I don't know if that would make a difference. Could the Allies move here, ignore the Portuguese ships and invade Portugal? I don't know. I wouldn't think so, but because this is more than one territory and the capital is not activated, we're being told that this is a neutral fleet and we'll have no problem with the Allies moving through the sea zone. So that's the way we're going to play it. So the British came around. They don't have a large task force here in North Africa. The Italians, all they have to do if they want to stop it is drop a couple ships to block or put something here, or just totally fortify Rome. But we'll see what they do. So that was the British move to try to have some last gasp since the Soviets in India failed. Number 5, they did liberate. The Canadian Liberation Forces came across rather than go down since they couldn't make it to that point. Canadian transports came across, liberated Liverpool from the Swedish invaders. But we fully expect all of this to come down now and wipe out the Allied fleet, the Soviet and the American fleet, which on the American turn for point 6 of our recap brought in their warships down to here and dropped off more troops. Now, the plan was basically the Americans were sacrificing their navy in order to drop a land force in northern Spain, because they took their transports that were already here, and rather than send them back, which would be pointless, brought them down with the British. So if the British can punch through, they'll do wave at 1 attack, and then maybe the Americans can follow up with a wave 2. That's sort of the hope, but it's a faint one. And that's 0.6. I don't think there was a 7. The U.S. in the Pacific, just to end kind of where we started on this side of the board, reinforced with their infantry at this military base in the Philippines. Did the same thing with the military base there. Because of I don't know if you saw it closely last time, the Eggman put a destroyer here, so the Americans couldn't get around it to liberate this and clear this zone. So with the bomber flying out from the Philippines and a sub and a destroyer, were able to sink the Japanese destroyer. And, that's it, basically. Pacific was a non-issue. With the commitment to reinforce Calcutta, which was definitely the right decision, these transports can't get to the Philippine Islands in time. Japan only has one more turn. These transports can easily, because this Japanese fleet doesn't have any transports, but right here, Formosa and the Philippines are both touching Season 106. So these transports could easily pick up 12 units, but that's not going to be enough to make it through the 1st Marine Division and their allied coalition. The Anzac and British forces, all the air here flew across, and even this transport sacrificed itself to come over and drop off a couple guys. I'm sure Egg will destroy it, but if he just doesn't pay attention, then in theory this could go 1, 2 and land forces here in Singapore. I don't think he'll let me. He's got enough forces he can just move down and fortify this one, because it could easily go 1, 2 here as well. But again, I don't expect 1, 2, take that one. So I don't expect it to survive, and he'll kill the transport right away. If he doesn't, that's just an oversight and shouldn't take away from the fact that the Axis dominated this game. But either way, next round is the last round for Germany, Japan. Then the Allies will have their final turn, and we'll end with Italy most likely storming the defensive walls of the British 8th Army in Cairo. With that, I'll post this, and for Eggman, I'm Captain G, over and out.